Well, hi guys and girls, Emma again. Welcome back to the spare room. Been a little bit reluctant to do this video for quite some time. I've wanted to do it, and I've been working on this little vise, which is actually a Chinese vise that I've spent a bit of time in, faced off and reamed out and made some decent pins for, and got it all running. Made a donut so it doesn't slip around. It's got pretty good on that leather. It stays positioned where it needs to be, and you can move it. I like that. So I've got this going, but aside from that, I want to do a video on I guess the important things for hand cut or bright cut engraving. And after Clickspring's amazing video this week, I guess you've all seen it. It's obviously a new skill for him and something he's picked up pretty quick to the point that he has, and that's really awesome, and it's worth going and check it out if you haven't. And if you're living under a rock somewhere, you probably need to see that just for inspiration purposes. But I think it's sort of brought up a need for a video in the machinist community on sharpening engravers, and I don't know of anyone else really to do it. This is in part, I guess, my background. I can certainly sharpen a graver with a little bit of messing around and get it to cut, and I can do a few basic cuts, so this might be a good place to start. There's two things that'll give you good engraving. If you're keen to go down this path and spend the time on it, there's really only one thing, and that's sharp gravers. This one has taken a bit of getting right. I've been messing with it, I guess, for a week. I've spent a fair bit of time on it. It started life as a longer graver. When they come, these are Valorb. I think they're carbon steel, or they're Whittier steel gravers. This is, I think they're 332, something like that, 2.5mm. This one's a square one. These two are actually lozenge shape or diamond shape. And this one's a diamond shaped graver. When they come like this, and they're way too long. They're probably, if you put a handle in them for turning, well, they're great. If you put a handle in them and use them for stone setting, well, that's probably they're good too. But you should be able to get nearly 2 gravers out of one. You won't quite, but chop a bit off. Hit it with the angle grinder and chop a bit off. And then the next thing, if we're going to get a sharp graver, is to understand what you're looking for. You want a decent loop. That's important because this is the level that you're working at. You've heard me say with a lot of projects, so that'll be good enough, or that's plenty good enough for this job. When it comes to sharpening gravers, there's no such thing. It's perfection, 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 and that's what you're chasing. If you're not happy to chase that, then this is probably not something that's for you. Simple as that. You need a couple of decent stones. About a 600 grit diamond bench stone is probably the best, or a bench plate. It doesn't have to be huge. Something about 1.5 inches, black and white measurements, 40 by 150, something like that would do. And you want a decent Arkansas stone, a white Arkansas, something like that. And a bigger bit than this probably. I've got a couple of bench stones, but this is probably good enough if that's all you've got, but it's not really the answer. It's worthwhile if you're interested in going down this route and finding or making something or buying something that will do the hard yards as far as getting angles right and square and flat. And I have this, and I've had it for many, many years. It's seen a bit of hard work. And this is J. Malcolm Wild's graver sharpening system. It's also very, very useful for things like screw head polishing, and in particular D bits. It shines as far as sharpening D bits and fly cutters, things like that. But I bought this many years ago. It's great because you can set all the angles and get everything repeatable and get it set up so that it works. It's not so great for diamond shaped engravers because this square hole here is very difficult to get them to sit in there nice and square because they're a little bit less angular. There are some tricks to that. This is pretty good for square engravers and round engravers, scorps and things like that. It's fantastic. But as far as like Lazen shaped engravers, it's a bit limited. There's another tool that GRS make. If you have a look at their website, they make some beautiful things. They make good compact good impact engravers. And another tool that they make, which is very, very good for getting angles right. Really, very good thing. But all you need to do is to get a nice square flat angle. With a black polish. Now, that sounds simple. And the black polish, I guess, is defined as a polish that doesn't have a reflection, or you can't see the texture of. It's very easy to leave marks, and then you can see that the surface is there. But a black polish shouldn't have marks in it, and it should give you a corner that's nice and square. And the best way to tell that is to have a look and see if you can see the facets on the on the edge of the edge of the tool. If you can see a reflection along that side or along that side when you turn it into the light, then that tool's not sharp. You're not even close to the point. Go back and start again. If you can't see those reflections and all you've got's really the two sides are all you can see, then when you turn it into light, then you're getting somewhere near. So there's a lot written about angles and nothing of any real consequence that I've been able to ever see or find. So you're best to just work out what works for you. This wants to go on this part of the hand, just here below that vein, and you want to hold this in your fingers. Excuse my filthy dirty nails, I've been scratching my old paint and stuff this morning. But you want 10mm, 15mm, something like that sticking out. This finger wants to touch on it like that, and you want to push the graver like that. This angle wants to be a little bit less than vertical. Vertical is too much. If that angle's, when you sit this down here on the ground and that angle's sitting at 45 degrees, that's way too much off it. Back it up. But it depends on the person. If you're running your graver up here, you probably want a bit more. If you're hooking your graver behind your finger, which I've seen some engravers do, you probably want a little bit less. So it's whatever's comfortable, and you need to work that out. This graver should, just with the facet on it, it should dig into your nail. So when you come across it, it should give you a curly chip at 90 degrees to the graver or to your nail, and it should dig in. It should catch and dig in. So when you got to that point, have a look with your loop and a bit of Rodico, just a bit of Rodico just to clean the end of this. Very difficult to tell just in a workshop environment. If you haven't got some Rodico, here's an old watchmaker's tip. Is a piece of bread. Knead this up for a minute. Just the centre out of the bread, and that'll clean your graver nicely. Give that a jab, and any loose particles that are on there, then if we have a look, we'll be able to see the edge of the graver nicely. And that's sort of what we got. The next job really is to put the backs on. Now, what you're going to find is that everyone's hand's a little bit different, and that's why you're not going to see that. You want that to be just under vertical, and you want the length of the graver wants to be about 10 to 15 millimeters, something like that, sticking out the end, right? I've taken the top corner off there for a couple of reasons. One is that using a hand graver like this, it's hard on your finger, so a round corner sort of find that gives me a little bit more certainty with the graver, I guess. It's also a quicker job to stone the end of it, but that's a moot point because really it doesn't take long anyway once you get it right. But just looking at that, that's where we need to be with, I don't know if I've even got that, but that's where we need to be with the end facet. Then we need to put the piece on the bottom. The English call it a back. We need to put the backs on. And the Americans tend to call it a heel. I'm not sure that terminology really means or matters much. But I guess I call it a back. And before you sort of say that's wrong or right, that's what I've always called it. So it's a back. And the back does one thing really. It stops the graver digging in. If you use this graver like this, and it will cut, but you're going to end up with a cut that's a lot deeper on the end, on this end and this end. You're just not going to be able to keep a cut going because it's just going to cut in, then you're going to break the point off and you're going to be back where you started. So that's not anywhere near finished. We need to put backs on. Now, two types of back that I know of, and there are other things too that people do when you read about things in books. One is a parallel back, and one's the bottom corner back. Now, it doesn't matter much. The parallel back is probably better for a couple of reasons. One is that when you're going around corners, you don't dig in, and that's fairly important. Less important on brass, but more important on gold and silver. You don't want to dig in and get an ugly corner on the outside, because that's what's going to catch the light, that outside corner, and that's what's going to make your engraving look amazing or really, really crap. So the parallel back's probably the easiest thing to do. And if we have a look, at a model I made up, then maybe you can see what we're talking about. This is just a block of pine that I made up. Give you some idea at the end of a graver, and where we're at, we've got this face here done. Now, backs are on here. Have a look at the Sharpie. A parallel back is right along this face here and right along this face here on a bit of an angle, and you should be able to see that angle there. So what that does, if you put backs in like that, or heels or whatever you want to call them, is that this sets its own depth, so the cutter won't cut any further than what's actually when it touches on there. So that's what you need. Traditional back is sort of this shape on the ends. That's fairly difficult to get in there and get right, especially if you're beginning. It's something that needs a lot of practice to get right. So I'm not sure that that's a good thing for beginners. There are reasons that the parallel back is probably a better system. And anyway, we're on that. So how do we do that? It needs to be the same. What you're going to find is that you're going to get, if it's not right, you're going to get a line that cuts a little bit deeper on one side than the other side. And you're going to get scratches, all sorts of things, if you're really going to be fussy. So to polish a back on a stone, and you want a 3mm Allen key, or 8 Allen key, a little bit smaller. Put that down on the stone and sit this on here. Right, and move it down so that it's just starting to touch there, and so that it's sitting nice and square. And have a bit of a look. You're going to find that that's probably the easiest way, and that's all it needs really. And that's cutting pretty nice really. Actually that's cutting pretty sweet, that graver. Pretty happy with that. If you have a look with the glass, and I can't really show you this on camera, and I'm sorry about that. But what you want to see is a perfect curl. Ideally, what you want to work for, and this hasn't got anywhere near yet, but what you want to work for is a perfect spiral shaving off the end of the graver at 90 degrees to the work. If you find that you're getting a ball, or you're getting a ugly chip like this, your grave is not right. Go back and start again. Mess around with it. This requires a fair bit of patience, and that brings us to the second point. Really, the second thing that's probably the most important, or one of the most important things. We said there was two things. One was sharp gravers, and the second one is practice. Get in and practice, get a graver cut, and then getting it cut like that. If you can see, let's have a look. If you can see the if you can, but there is a burr, or there is a shaving off the end of that. It's not just chips, it's a shaving. You can brush that off. So that graver, black polish on the end, proper backs or heels, the right length sticking out the end. You want when it sits in your palm of your hand, you want it there, and you want the right angle, which is up to you. If we look at that, that's about where it needs to be. Some people have flat hands, some people stick their hand up like that. Everyone's a little bit different. And if you're engraving a convex or a concave surface, you're going to end up with different results again. So you want a selection of gravers. Start with a square one. This one is diamond shaped or lozenge shape. It's probably okay for a lot of things. And it's a good graver, but it's a rotten cow of a thing to sharpen properly. It's hard to hold in anything. It's really not the answer. So square gravers are good. Another thing too is that good gravers, good decent gravers, come in two different sorts, two different metals. This one is, they call it Whittier steel, which is a carbon steel with a bit of something else in it to make it hold its edge. And they're really good. A lot of Swiss gravers are Whittier, and or whatever the proprietary name for them is now. But Whittier steel used to be what it was called. And the other sort is high-speed steel. High-speed steel gravers are predominantly used for setting stones, jewellery work, that sort of thing. Avoid them if you can. They're too hard to sharpen. They chip very easily, and they haven't got the flex and the give in them that Whittier does. So that's another tip. Anyway, I hope you found this useful. If there's any response or anything, I might do something on drawing acanthus leaves, because I think that that's something that people are fairly interested in. And probably a video on actual bright cut engraving and prepping surfaces and things like that, which you never see anywhere either. And a prep surface is more important to decent engraving than the actual engraving. So if you're interested, let me know. But thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Welcome to all my new subscribers. I thought I'd get this up this week because this is quite topical at the moment. And more soon, guys and girls. Be kind to each other.